Next up, we got Dwayne Henry. We'll be teaching, be instructing module 3.
Hey, thanks for being here once again. My name is Dwayne Henry. I'm from Utah. I both officiate and coach. So I guess I'm blessed to have the opportunity to kind of see things from both sides or perspectives. I was asked to talk to go over a module today. The module we're going over is module 3. I think Todd and I did a great job on 1 or 2 really quickly. We'll kind of get through some of the things we have set for today for module 3. Tim, can you? Thanks. A couple things that we're going to talk about through this module is going to be quad pod, or commonly known as Merkle. I know on the East Coast, that's where I'm from originally, we call this the Jersey. Don't ask me why. I guess the guys in Jersey hit this all the time. Action, attack rather, counterattack, and counteraction, along with cycling of actions. These 3 was attack, counterattack, and counteractions can be somewhat kind of complicated to watch in a real life situation, but there are some kind of keys and clues and tips that kind of help kind of lead you to the right direction of understanding how an action is scored, or options of scoring of some of these situations or scenarios, along with cycling of attacks. That'll be towards the end, and that one kind of gets kind of fun too. You'll see that a lot more in Greco-Roman than you do freestyle, but we can talk about that when we get there. Tim, thanks. So this first image is quad pod position, where you have Derringer on top. This position is commonly known as a Merkle or quad pod, right, internationally. And this is generally a folk style takedown, right? This is where we would score 2 points for this first action. But in freestyle and Greco, it becomes a little bit different, because this position is not going to be a takedown until it hits criterias of either the bottom wrestler, defensive wrestler, getting thrown, or that defensive wrestler having 1 or 3 points of contact down. That's head, elbow, or knee to hit the mat, right? So one of the things is our kids aren't used to even kids and athletes aren't used to even defending much in this position, because they've already given up a takedown at their point, right? Normally they're either going down and working from bottom, or their knee sliding up, or whatever. And being able to be strong and hold this position is just a different skill that these kids need to work on a little bit more in a freestyle and Greco than they don't normally even attack, right, or work on during a folk style, because it doesn't make a daggone difference. So next slide for me. So this position, like we said before, Merkle, Jersey, whatever you want to call it, we can go the old-fashioned Mike Swisher and just say it 100 times. But the Merkle, this position specifically, is not a takedown. Okay, so a couple of things need to happen. Obviously, in folk style, we're familiar with this one commonly when you get that leg inside, a side headlock, along with the arm trapped, right, and you're controlling this position with a little restraining power. That generally be considered a takedown or a takedown position. And obviously in Greco, it's not going to be a thing, right? But in freestyle wrestling, this is not a takedown, obviously. One of the things that needs to change, or it's different, is the top wrestler or the offensive wrestler needs to make sure that he gets his leg out, the one that's hooked onto that inside leg, and passes behind his opponent, right, before he'd be scoring that 2 points for that takedown, right? Let's see. You can get to the next one. Thanks, Tim. So we're gonna go through a couple slides that'll have a couple different scenarios through your Merkle, through your quad pod positions, etc., and we'll kind of talk about those a little bit. Oops. Okay. So this first couple are going to go over our Merkle position. You're going to see the situation where a takedown is going to be scored, and where a takedown or points are going to be scored out of these positions. You can go ahead. So you have this situation, red shoots in, hits a leg attack, tries to get around, traps their leg in kind of a Merkle situation, right? She's not even trapping an arm or a leg, but until she takes this leg out, red, until she takes her leg out and comes behind her opponent, right? Passes behind while in parterre, she's not scoring a takedown. So this situation, that work, just for that one, is not giving her any points or a takedown. The situation right next to it, right here, is going to be a little bit different. So you see kind of same Merkel takedown position, but what you see is he kind of Blue kind of high legs, stuffs the guy's head down, right? And high legs his leg over in order to put his opponent in danger. He freaks out, goes to his belly, and then Blue kind of assumes that top position, that dominant position, in order to get a little time to turn on top. So you have a situation where we're not scoring takedown. We can clearly see the leg is still in, and you have a situation where we do see a takedown scored out of that Merkel position. Okay, attack, attack, counterattack, and counteraction. These, like I said, can be a little bit different or nuancy. There's some things that kind of lead us in the right direction, making sure we understand these scoring situations, where the scores or the points should be, and kind of leads us in the right direction to make the right calls officials, but also as a coach as well to understand, okay, it's very likely that that could have been an option for that score, or that was scored correctly, even though you may not have liked that situation. There are dozens of times where I didn't like the situation, but knowing and understanding kind of some of these things with attack, counterattacks, and counteractions helped me just kind of grind my teeth and get through the match, even though it's not in my best interest score-wise, but understanding kind of what things should look like in the flow of a bout. Our attack situations are situations where an athlete takes initiative to conduct a legitimate offensive attempt to score. So you can use that as an example as maybe I hit a double leg, heads on the outside. I'm looking to run my head across the body and run the guy down, right? Some notes or cues that kind of help you kind of lead you to the right direction may be watching the wrestler's lock and momentum, right? As he runs at that angle, we understand, I think most of us have wrestled before, we understand kind of where our head is. We're using our head against the body, running across the body at that angle, and trying to finish to the mat. So there's things, understanding that side of it, there's some things that kind of help us towards understanding counterattack and counteraction just a little bit as well, right? So when we talk about counterattacks, these are attacks that are a response to some type of an attack. So for example, you could think of a double leg. Someone hits a double leg or a high crotch, and the other guy goes right to maybe cross face and putting the guy in the middle and right to maybe a chest wrap situation, right? This chest wrap, head inside trap situation, it wouldn't have occurred if the other guy didn't initiate some type of attack, right? And then a couple of cues that kind of helps us with determining whether it's an attack, a counterattack, or an action would be the direction the attack went and if it possibly changed. So if we go with that same situation with like a double leg, one guy sits a double leg, the other guy cross faces him, puts him in the middle, goes chest wrap, and then runs his feet the opposite direction, right, to hit this chest wrap that the double leg was originally going, or the double leg should initially go. That kind of cues us in on certain things to help us understand kind of where things are going, whether it may be an attack or a counterattack. Our counteraction situations, are actions that are intended to stop the offensive wrestler and possibly even hold the offensive wrestler on their back. Those can come in like a super wide kind of array of options, obviously, because wrestling is a super dynamic sport. But you can think about, for example, maybe high crotch lift. One guy goes high C, the other guy goes right to his step around, right around that corner, dropping his level, lifting to the crotch. That's kind of a weird one because there's so many things that can happen. If the guy establishes his feet, it could go a 4-point action. If the guy stays down in parterre and on his knees, and hits this and this crotch lift is hit on him, that'd be just kind of a counteraction and just 2 points, right, for his opponent. So if you kind of take those notes for some of these actions, they kind of help lead you in the right direction of where things are going to help try to score it correctly or evaluate the actions correctly as they occur. Another kind of guide to kind of get you through a couple of these for attack, counterattack, and counteraction. the attacking wrestler maintains the hold throughout their lock. That's going to be your attack, more like that double leg example that we talked about a little bit ago. Different defensive wrestler goes over both shoulders, that could be an attack situation, right? The head of the attacking wrestler is inside. That's when it gets a little complicated, and you may have to start thinking about counterattack situations, just like that crossface, step the middle, heads on the inside. That could also happen from situations where I put my head on the inside. I go for some type of head inside attack, and this is where I am, and the other guy takes advantage of this kind of situation. The attack changing directions, those things that kind of cue you into whether it's counterattack. It will more likely be a counterattack situation. Losing our locks on legs and different things like that, that could be a counterattack situation. So when we talk about our locks or losing our locks, that could be from a physical actual hold lock of kind of locking your hands together, or even just kind of the clamp or the hold you have on the leg. That can come from a kind of a double leg situation, even like a single leg situation. You'll see some of the higher level guys, they'll hit maybe a high crotch or a double and go back to a single leg or high crotch kind of situation and attack the top side of the leg and the bottom side of the leg to kind of neutralize some of the maneuvering you can do in defense to kind of get up and get through their opponent. But when they let go of that hold in those counteraction kind of situations, those kind of cue you into letting you know whether it was a counterattack or if he lost control of that situation. If an attack is stopped by the defensive wrestler, that is more than likely a counterattack. And then if they're stopped in danger, obviously it could be counteraction. The biggest thing to kind of keep in mind is, where did the attack finish? Or did they end up in danger? And then who's on top at the end? And if there's like any doubt, it's always best to just go in favor of the rest of the attacking wrestler. So tip from the coach, some of the referee's perspective to the coach. So two-leg attacks are better than one. Almost always, right? You have a high percentage of getting those points. Also, just kind of getting a guy off the ground, which a lot of you guys coach at a very high level, you guys get that. Getting the guy off the ground, two hands to a leg are better than one, or two-leg attacks rather are better than one. And looking to do things like carrying your opponent to the edge. Now, both freestyle and Greco, these are huge benefits, right? As we understand that counterattacks aren't allowed in the protection area rather. So I'm not able to counter through the protection area. So we'll go with a simple example of maybe headlock reroll. In the middle, it'd be 4 points for the headlock, 2 points for reroll. In the protection area, that would be just 4 points only, headlock scoring only, right? So freestyle situation, double leg, running towards the out of bounds, right? Or lifting and running and trying to finish out of bounds will help you with that offensive situation with just your attack scoring and no counterattack option happening against you, right? In scoring situations. You'll see it commonly in Greco too, when you see guys get these lifts. Maybe they'll do some type of straddle lift, step out, step back in. The defensive wrestler ends up kind of getting legs on both sides. And that one turns into I don't know if you know exactly what I'm talking about. It turns into kind of an awkward situation where if I hit this turn, it may be awkward or we may scramble out and maybe caught my back, etc. But that is a super situation where it's good to use the boundaries, use the edge, and use that protection area to protect yourself, right, from getting countered in some of those scenarios. Let's see. Okay. Head on the outside chest lock. That's more of like kind of on my knees, high crotch or double, and the guy goes chest wrap around me and hits kind of chest wrap or a roll, right? Me maintaining that lock or maintaining the legs kind of help towards making sure I score in that situation. But the moment I kind of let go and freak out, I kind of call it like an oh crap factor when the guy goes, oh crap, I think I'm in trouble. That's kind of a situation where you're going to determine whether it's 2-2. if you're maintaining the lock, you're trying to finish this move and he hits this roll, I maintain that hold and get the legs higher, right? Elevate a leg, as opposed to letting go and just trying to kind of make sure I can stay chest down or belly down, not get scored on. If I do get scored on that situation, those situations are more than likely just going to be a 2 only, right, situation in those rolls. Okay, protection area. So we've talked about that a little bit. Our protection area, and Todd did a good job about that too, is our commonly known like as the out of bounds area, right? So typically only one wrestler will score, and that's why we talk about the situations of using those in your favor. Maybe a double leg running towards the out of bounds, or these lift situations when you try to use those out of bounds situations. There are some situations as well, and I think you guys are commonly aware of them, where it's going to be a little better for us to be able to just give up a takedown, give up a step out rather than, or even a step out and a flee rather than bigger points, right? If I'm up by 2 or 3, I'm getting, ground's getting taken on me pretty good, and I look and I see the boundaries line or the protection area is right behind me, deciding to give a little bit of fight, step out and keep wrestling, like where I'm giving up that point's a lot better than hard push, get thrown. Hard push, some pressure change, good snap, get spun behind. So just kind of understanding situational awareness and kind of criteria awareness is super important in these situations too. And they kind of help us. Anytime we kind of understand the rules and understand kind of how things work, kind of helps us to, in a way, manipulate the situations to have them work best for us. It's kind of like doing your taxes. I can do my own taxes, but I think an accountant will do a lot better at making sure he gets the best situation for myself, right? Counterattack situations in the protection areas. Here's some kind of guides and tips kind of help with determining also things we can do or start teaching to some of our athletes to help navigate situations where they're better for us. Hips, rotating your hips and not going straight backwards, right? Getting double legged, maybe pulling a guy up to, from a whiz situation, pulling him up and getting double legged and going to my back. That's obviously an easy, 4-point kind of situation. Me getting some type of back step or rotation, and even like go to my side or my back, or it may be a situation where it looks like we both hit the out of bounds at the same time or something like that. What is it? If you end up going to your back and don't score, it's gonna be you're giving up the most points 99% of the time. Counterattacks can be done inside the mat, right? But outside the protection area, they can't be done. So if you get situations, for example, where let's see, counterattacks hit and it finishes out of bounds, inbounds rather, it finishes out of bounds, that's going to score. But also if you get some of them where they're out of bounds and it starts, that's this kind of situation where it would not score for you. So you can look at, and let me jump a little bit forward, like cycling actions, maybe in a body lock situation, where one athlete steps around and kind of pauses and doesn't pull the trigger, and the other athlete re-steps. And these situations could be either stepping inbounds or sometimes in the protection area while he's in the midst of this particular action, right? Re-steps, creates load, creates lift, finishes his action, that still is going to score. Now, in those situations where he steps and he's not successful in those situations, he is going to give up more than likely at least a point, kind of depending upon how they land and what happens on the mat, right? So if they just kind of step and just kind of land, knees down, chest down, whatever, it's probably going to be a point. They end up kind of creating lift, creating load, doesn't go perfect for them, they end up on their back. It's, it may sometimes be a 2-point or a counter action. Okay, so we're gonna go through a couple more scenarios. This is gonna start our attack situation with blocks held. And blue ends up kind of down block and circling around and getting to the waist, right? Following the guy out of bounds and ends up on a double leg before they get out of bounds. But you do see red kind of hunch over, try to grab some type of chest lock, but the lock was still maintained throughout the throw. So like we said, kind of the lock isn't necessarily just the lock of putting your hands together, but kind of holding onto that double leg. Kind of similar thing, like I said, it doesn't have to be locked hands on each other or just on two legs necessarily. It can still be kind of maintained on that one leg right here. Hands are locked, still goes through, maintains lock throughout the whole situation, right? And then it kind of ends up on top through this sequence of action. Let's see. Okay, losing your lock situations. Okay, so in this scenario, you kind of see he ends up getting his double leg, running through and finishing his action. But before he can finish back, belly down and finish behind or whatever, he ends up getting flipped through, right? Lets go of his lock 100%, rotates through. And while he circles up to his feet and wrestles through, he ends up stepping out. So he goes from feet as he establishes his standing position right to out of bounds, right, with his foot. And so that would be one step out of that case. Even we're going so 4, 2, and then one step out for that situation on that ending. This one's kind of similar, right? But this one's kind of inbound still. She hits that double leg. Blue ends up stopping her a little bit, right? Getting kind of a chest wrap, flipping her through, but red ends up completely letting go of her locker hold before she comes back around. And the video doesn't necessarily determine if she comes back around all the way not, but she completely lets go of that lock or that hold. And so that's a situation where it would be the counterattack score. Okay, central wrestling area and out of bounds. Okay, so that one's kind of I saw it earlier. That one's kind of a good scenario where he gets good lift, gets to his feet, finishes his back, but at the same time, red takes this hold and uses momentum after it hits the mat to roll through. That's a scenario where inbounds, that's going to be a 4-2. But using the boundaries or the protection area to your favor as he gets his feet off the mat, that would probably be, if for him, he's up by a lot of points anyway at this point, sit at 5. Walking to the boundary lines, driving to the boundary lines and trying to finish the protection area would probably be to his favor. Okay, try that one more time. Okay, see red keeps driving blue, right? He drives him, trips him, hooks his leg on the way down, and ends up going to his back. But while he's going down, after it's his back, he tries to rotate blue tries to rotate red to his back. But since he's scored in the protection area, just offensive only, right? So red only in that situation. Let's see. Okay, head on the outside, head on the inside and the outside scenarios. It's getting a little choppy for me. So this one's pretty simple, right? He goes, is this Molnaro? Yeah. He goes straight double, lifts him off the ground, takes him right to danger. And the danger necessarily wasn't quite all the way straight to his back as clear as day. The danger was elbow right here in this situation. So see how he hits the mat, he posts and the elbow breaks, right? And so that would be our danger situation. So all red, 4 red. This one's going to be an opposite one when we talk like head trapped, right? I think Jordan ends up going head inside on his attack, and Dake capitalizes on the situation, keeps his head trapped. And even though there was a lock right around the waist of Dake at this point, it's still going to be all Dake, right? Because head's trapped, feet go off the mat, and he kind of goes the opposite direction a little bit too, where you'd probably want to be driving, right? Yeah, that one's a pretty good obvious one, but that was a really good one. So all blue. Change the direction. So this one kind of looks cool and exciting, and then the story changes really quickly as we get to the protection area. So blue's gonna hit a quick duck under, right? Get to the body, and before he gets to the protection area, right? Red hits a little lateral or throw, ends up slipping out, coming on top, right, and controlling that position. So that was complete, excuse me, kind of change of direction, right? So instead of continuing going backwards or driving through them, right, blue got tossed, right, didn't end up going to danger, and then kind of red ended up slipping out on top. So this one's a little bit different, right? Blue gets driving to the zone on red before they get out of bounds. Red changes directions, right? Ends up rotating her opponent all the way to her back, all red, right? Even though that's not the way the story looked from the beginning. Okay, a couple more for change of direction. Okay, so one more time. Okay, so blue comes in single leg, right? And this is, she kind of gets a half Schultz position that's completely legal in that situation, right? Ends up kicking her through, elevating her through, and rolling, red rolls blue directly across her back, right? And then scrambles up. So there's a complete change of direction, right? From where the action was going and where blue initiated that single leg originally. That one changes the story too. So yeah, blue gets a single leg, red hits kind of a dump roll, right? Takes his opponent right off his feet, all the way from feet to danger, right? And finishes kind of on top. So that one 100% right is the change of direction. That's not the direction or the route that move was supposed to start and finish, right? Okay, out of bounds. So in this scenario, you see kind of some good fight from both athletes, right? Before any athlete's able to score, particularly, and then red gets to his feet, finishes the attack, right? And finishes out of bounds, all red. Okay, and that was kind of the situation we talked about a couple of times, right? Either running to the out of bounds or lifting and getting your opponent to the out of bounds. Had this action particularly took place in the middle of the mat, that would be 4 blue, 2 red situation. But because of where it happened, location, and that counters can occur in the protection area, it's going to be just was it 4 only. In parterre, we'll go over a couple of scenarios in parterre before we finish up. So we see another head trapped inside situation. And I think the more versed we get with things, we start understanding either finishing quick or not going too much with head inside situations, and freestyle is not good because of the way things are scored. But as his head's trapped, right, he gets rolled through, he completely lets go of his lock, posts his hands, and rotates all the way through. So it's gonna be 2 blue, right? As he goes straight to danger. Okay, one more time. So if you look at this one, he had 2 hands on the leg. I think I remember telling you, whether it's locked or you have a good hold, isolate top and bottom, it's kind of what he has a little bit, right? But he completely lets go to catch the waist, right? And then gets rolled through. And the reason he's letting go is because he's trying to either maintain or not go across his back, which he ends up doing anyway. Then he ends up recovering back on top. So it'd be 2 red, right? And then 1 blue for coming back on top. And that's because they were in parterre when that happened, initiated. Okay, stop and attack by the defending wrestler. So you see that one, there's a little bit of pause, right, for the stop. It's fortunate that he wasn't able to score from it, but if he were able to take him through straight to his back or roll him through to his side, that would have been all blue. But because red maintained his lock in this situation, it's still going to be all red. Okay, another double leg chest wrap situation where you're going to, was it 4-2, right? Because of the situation with the whole double leg. 100%, let's go, kind of freaks out or panics, right? And rolls across his own back, then recovers. Maybe 4-2. And I think this is one of our last ones. And okay. So this one's a throw in the protection area, right? And this one he ends up landing on his back, right? Initiating an action, getting driven a little bit, initiates an action, goes the opposite direction, but ends up landing on his back. And that'd be a counter situation. I think the next one is kind of similar, and it's not quite from a, what do you call it, like arm throw or headlock position, like Na talked about. And he drives a little bit and almost ends up on his belly for a slip throw. This one could be slip throw, you could consider it, but I think he holds him there for a significant enough time in order to get a counter out of this situation. So blue locks up, gets a back arch, tries to finish through, stays kind of on the bridge the whole time, right? But he gets held for just a second or two, right after he posts and holds him there, right here, gets his hips off to the side, holds him there for a second, still good bridge by blue, and then he pops off to his stomach. So that one could be considered a risk, but I think I like counter for that one. Let's see. Okay, and then our last portion is going to be phases of scoring actions. So there are pretty much 3 phases. There's basically the initiation, which is someone taking a significant risk to get what they need to do, right? To get that action. There's let me see. Okay, there's risk, which exposes the wrestler to danger or legitimate attempting scoring situation, and then there's the completion of it. Cycling actions can happen in freestyle. I have a hard time trying to think of a couple on the spot, but it's more of a kind of a Greco situation. There's a scenario right here. You'll see kind of a more body lock, step around, re-step situations where you'll see those occur. So you'll see a step, an immediate re-step, right? Load him, creates load, creates lift, and then kind of finishes his action. So one more time. I think it's blue, steps in first, steps around first, right? There's a re-step by red, back arch, creates lift, creates load, and tries to finish. All right, and he ends up getting his opponent out of bounds in this case. So it'd be a 1 point, right? For where he traveled, where he took his opponent from his feet to end up getting out of bounds. Thanks for hearing from me. If you have any questions, now would be the time for you, but thanks, Tim, and thanks, panel.